Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's really good to be with you today. I want to thank you personally for joining us. We have a ton of material to cover today, so I'm super excited about this. We are 6 days away from training camp, which, as you know, is a massive and major deal. Massive and major, as the season officially kicks off in 6 days in Costa Mesa. Looking forward to jumping on that bird and making the short flight down there. And obviously just getting away from oppressive heat will be great. But so many great things happening inside Raider Nation. And I want to answer some of your emails today, some of your questions today, and just dig in. I want to preface today's podcast with a couple of things. Number one, if you want me to answer a Raider question that you may have, you can email me at SpartanNationMail, MAIL, @yahoo.com. Put in the subject line, Raiders Q&A. You need to include your name. We don't take Raider Hondo or Raider Bill or Raider Tom. We'll use your first name in your middle and your last initial. And only email me once a week per email address, please. People that email more than once per week just move over into the spam file. I want to be able to digest as many of your emails and questions as I can. We get a lot. We got more this off season than during the season last year, and it's ramping up as the season's getting closer because we just keep growing. And I want to make sure that your emails get read and just don't get put to the side. If there's no name, the first thing that's looked at when my staff looks at emails is there a name? And if there's no name, it's automatically deleted. We don't even read it. So you need to have your first name and your last initial on there. We would never share your first name and your last name unless some people will put on there, please use, or just put them on there. Like, let's say they'll put Hondo instead of Hondo C, it's Hondo Carpenter. Okay, then we may use that. But that's normally what our plan is and the way we do things. So please email me. I want to be able to address them. That's important to me. You guys are my bosses. I want to hear from you, and I want to give you the feedback. So let's get right in. We got a lot of Raiders coverage today. Let's get to the first one. Comes from Carrie L. Carrie says, Hondo, I have a question. In the offseason, do you talk with the players much? When's the last time you talked to a player? You don't have to tell me who, but I would just like to get a feel about the job of a beat writer. That's from Carrie L. And Carrie lives in Orange County, California. Carrie, that's a great question. I would say in the last 36 hours at the time of this taping, I've talked to 3. Sometimes you don't talk to anybody for a week, 2 weeks. And you talk on a various number of subjects. I mean, some of the guys you know very well. I can tell you the 3 people that I talked to, one of them had a question for me on something. One, we were just literally talking as friends about a certain type of subject. And the other one was something Raider-oriented. But it's just like anybody else. They're human beings. And, again, you can't really say. I mean, during the season, every day. Not during the season, sometimes an hour, sometimes a week. You just don't really know. But that's an interesting question. Thank you for asking, Carrie. The next one comes to us from Michael. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. Now, Michael, I need to explain something. I'm a native Michiganian. Some people would call it Michigander, but most people don't know. The term Michigander was made up as a derogatory slang term. It used to be Michiganian. I don't look at it as slang, so you can call me Michiganian, Michigander, but I'm a native of Michigan. So the way that you write your city, I believe you emailed before, and I had 3 or 4 people email in saying, hey, how do you know that they were in Charlotte, North Carolina, and not in Charlotte, Michigan? Both are spelled the same. So I don't know if you're from Charlotte, North Carolina, or Charlotte, Michigan, but you spelt that in your email. Here's what Michael says. My question, if the Raiders win this year's Super Bowl, do you think the NFL league office would showcase as many primetime games as they are doing with Kansas City this year? My thinking from the past is that the NFL loves to make the Raiders out as villains. First of all, I think it's a great question. And you've seen the last several years, the Raiders got a ton of primetime games, even when they weren't Super Bowl contenders. So this is what I would tell you. The Raiders get massive ratings. People either love the Raiders or hate the Raiders. There's very little middle ground. Now, for example, when I was a boy growing up, and I know this was a long time ago, Monday Night Football on the East Coast was a huge deal. I mean, I think it was a huge deal everywhere, but I'm only referring to being a Midwesterner from Michigan. And my dad and I, every Monday night, would watch Monday Night Football. Well, it almost seemed to be the Raiders were playing every night. And because of the way they played, because people wanted to watch them, we didn't necessarily love or hate them. My father had tremendous respect for the Raiders. So naturally, I did too. And but they are a draw. They are one of the few. I'm trying to think of the right term, but there is a handful of franchises that move the needle every time they're on TV. They just move it. It's who they are. You may not like this, but Dallas is one of them. The Pittsburgh Steelmen are that way. But there are very few franchises, but when they're on, they move the needle. Has it always been this way? Kansas City moves the needle now more than anybody. They are the biggest draw. In fact, I was talking to somebody from one of the networks recently, a very good friend of mine, who was sharing with me that, he understands people don't like the Taylor Swift connection, but it's reality. To not talk about it would be disingenuous. It moves the needle. People tune in to see if they're going to get a glimpse of her or her boyfriend or whomever. Is it because of football reasons? No. And so you and I, who are football fans, that may irritate you, but it shouldn't the NFL. If I own the NFL or if I owned one of the ratings networks, I'd put the Chiefs on there all the time if they got the biggest ratings. So do I think the Raiders would get a lot more primetime games? I do, because they've already gotten them when they weren't a Super Bowl contender. So yes, I think that, the Raiders will probably always get more than they deserve. Probably, not every year, but for a large part. And when they're really good, they're going to get a massive amount because they move the needle. One breakup song from Taylor Swift and the Chiefs go, they're still good, so they're still going to draw. But one breakup song from Taylor Swift and a non-winning season, and the Chiefs are back to being the Chiefs of old. But they're not there, and you got to give them all the credit in the world. But winning covers a multitude. The next email I found fascinating. It comes from Jeff Park. I think we could possibly would be witnessing a Raider renaissance. I love Patrick Graham and think this will likely be his last season with the Raiders. My question is, how common is it for the NFL coordinators to be limited by their head coach? I believe AP cut Patrick loose when he took over, and it took our defense to another level. Why would a head coach limit what a defensive or offensive coordinator potentially does? Jeff Park. Okay, I think this is a great question. I think it's a brilliant question. I want to address it, but I'm going to have to dissect it a little bit. We're going to have to go forward to go backwards here, so bear with me for a minute, Jeff. First of all, it's very common when a guy gets a chance to be a head coach, he knows what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to do. And a lot of people are micromanagers when put in a position of leadership. They don't understand that one of the biggest keys to leadership is hiring a great staff and then trusting them to do their job. My father was a terrific businessman, and he used to always say, hire people you can trust, and then when they prove to you that they can't, you fire them and move on. But as long as you have them employed, you have to trust them. You have to empower people to do their job. Think about this. How many of you out there in Raider Nation work for a company that you could be doing things a lot better than how your boss is doing it or how your boss wants it done? But it's where you get your paycheck. So you do what you're told. I'm sure there are plenty of young people. I know my children watch the podcast that think, man, I could do that differently than dad and be right. And my adult children get that possibility. Dexter doesn't. Dexter yesterday was playing and very hot out, and he wanted to go somewhere, and I kept telling him no. And why? Was it because I didn't want him to go for a walk? Of course not. I love that my son loves to exercise and play outside. But I also didn't want him to go where it was going to be excessively hot and he could get injured. Okay. So there's a balance. When he's little, it's my job to protect him. But when you get to the NFL, come on now. I don't understand. I understand why they do it. I just disagree with it. It's because, you know what? It's so hard to get a chance to be a head coach. I want it done my way. Okay. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example of something that I tremendously respect about Antonio Pierce. He knew what he wanted his offense to look like. So he went out and found a coordinator that, excuse me, he went out and found a coordinator that had the ability to run the offense that he wants. And he trusts Luke to run it. Now, will he get an idea of the game plan? Sure. Will there be times he's like, no, I want to run the ball here? Of course. But he isn't going to micromanage. That isn't AP. He doesn't roll that way. He doesn't operate that way. That is not the way that he even thinks. It's not part of his mentality. Okay? Josh McDaniels had failed terribly in Denver. And he worked hard to change who he was. And I'm going to tell you right now, and this gives me crap every time, but I don't care. My job isn't to be popular. My job is to report accurately. He had really gone through a change and had really adapted himself. So he gets a chance to be a head coach again. And almost as soon as he got the job, there was that fear back, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. So you know what? Let's micromanage. Now, the problem is this. Josh had coached under Bill Belichick, who was an offensive genius. Bill had let Josh do everything Josh wanted offensively because between Bill and really it was whatever Tom Brady wanted after a certain amount of time. And Bill didn't bother them. But Josh saw how Bill was so demanding on the defense. This is what I want. Well, the difference was really in New England, Bill was the defensive coordinator. So Josh comes in, he's going to run his offense the same way he's always run it, and I'm going to run my defense like Bill. And he panicked. And it cost him. So I think why do a lot of people micromanage? Insecurity. Why do a lot of people micromanage? Ego. I think that you could ask any one of my employees, and they would all tell you, if Hondo does one thing that I respect and like is he doesn't micromanage me. I tell everyone that works for me, the same thing I told you my dad said. The moment I have to look over my shoulder and babysit you after a certain period of learning the job, I'm not going to keep you around. I'm going to get rid of you. I don't want to micromanage you. You know what? There are times that guys that work for me write stories that I don't agree with. But that's okay. I don't want them. All of our coverage at SI on the Raiders, I don't want it to have anything to do with this is what Hondo thinks. Have your own opinion. And I think that's the biggest reason why coaches do that. And I think it just costs them dearly. Now, I've mentioned this before. There are some people that don't want to respect Patrick Graham, which just makes no sense. But I'll tell you, after years of working in the public eye, you just don't try to make sense of stuff anymore. Oh, well, it really wasn't Patrick Graham. It was Marvin Lewis. That is people are entitled to any opinion they want, even when they're stupid. I'll never forget the first time I saw that. I was with AP somewhere. And doesn't matter where, but we were just kind of visiting privately, hanging out. And he asked me what's new or whatever. And I told him about reading those comments. And I won't tell you what he said, but it was not complimentary to the people that had those comments. And it was just funny. It was just funny. And people are going to have any opinion they want. But AP knew what Patrick Graham wanted to do, and he agreed with Patrick Graham. And he cut him loose, said, do what you want. And you saw how good. Do I think more coaches would be better off? Yeah, if you don't think you can trust a guy, don't hire him. Now, there's a couple guys on this staff that are good coaches. I'm really sorry. I'm allergic to something. And there are a couple guys on this staff that are terrific coaches, but new to working with AP. He still trusts them. Do your thing, as long as it fits within what the Raiders want to do. So I don't get it either. But I do want to address one thing. When you talk about witnessing a Raider renaissance, I couldn't agree with you more. I truly believe in the direction of this franchise. Truly believe it. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team this year at all. But I truly believe in the direction of this franchise, and I really like the way that it's going and the way it's happening. The next one comes to us from Otis. Otis E. Otis E says, Hondo, I have a quick comment and a question. You have been on top of reporting about Devonte Adams a year before he came here. Every single thing with Devonte Adams, you have reported and reported accurately and have been the breaker of the information. I literally remember the first time that I became familiar with you was a year before Devonte came here, when you wrote about things being put in motion about him coming and that you thought he would be a Raider. I remember listening to several other of the Raider beat writers mocking you for that. However, when he came, they all said nobody saw this coming. I thought it funny that they mocked you for reporting it a year in advance, and then when it happened, didn't give you any credit. I just want to say to you, I appreciate your Devonte coverage. Nothing that was said yesterday by his agent was anything new that you haven't already reported and reported multiple times. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the great coverage. With that said, you intrigued me about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers becoming a Raider, that no one seems to be thinking about that. I thought it was brilliant. What do you put the possibility percentage-wise of Aaron being a Raider next year? Otis, I'm not going to put any percentage on there. I think the Raiders are all in on the three quarterbacks that they have. And I think they want to see one of them succeed. If Aaron Rodgers were to be the quarterback here next year, I think it would be an admission that the three quarterbacks on the roster, all three failed. And I like all three quarterbacks on the roster, and I have a hard time in my mind wrapping it around the possibility of all three failing. I just thought that, to me, that doesn't gel right when I use my Uncle Hondo truth meter. So let me just say, I'm not going to put a percentage on it, and that's why. But I appreciate all your kind words, and I appreciate you recognizing and respecting all the coverage that we did. Here's the next one. Hondo, my 11-year-old son and I listen to you every day. Most days, Mom listens too. Good. Thank you all for listening. I'm a lifelong Raider fan, and my son is the biggest Raiders fan. I know he was able to get the rest of the family to join Raider Nation. Good job, little buddy. We live in New York and are going over our budget to go to the home opener against Carolina. Ooh, great choice of a game to go to. A couple of questions for you. I remember you saying you'd be at the tailgate. Where can we find you? My son, wife, and I would love to meet you. Yeah, the main tailgate right next to the stadium, Lot J. So if you send me an email the day before, or any of you listening, and just say, hey, Hondo, I'd like to meet you. What time will you be? And I think it's Lot J. What time will you be there walking around for us to meet you? I'll give you the times. It changes because some weeks I have to do interviews. I'll do several radio and national media before the game. Sometimes they want to tape it 3 hours before. Sometimes they want to do it live an hour before. Once I know my schedule, and I usually know my schedule about 24 hours in advance, if you send me an email, I'll tell you where I'll be. And I would love to meet you. That would be fun. Thank you for giving me that privilege. Next one is, we are staying 2 days in Vegas, and I've never been. Where should I take my 12-year-old Raider fan on the non-game days? Thanks for being an ethical and clean reporter that we can listen to every day. Adam Rundell and Elmira. And I know it's Elvira, the Oak Ridge Boys song, but Elmira, New York. So I'll tell you what, you will love Vegas. Vegas is a great city. And no matter, everybody thinks Vegas is only the Strip, or that the Strip is only gambling and adult partying and fun. That's not true. There is so much great stuff to do in Vegas. Just some great stuff to do. There's some great things. I would tell you there's a lot of great shows. There's the V show, which is tremendous, on the Miracle Mile. One of the best magicians in all of Vegas plays in that show all the time. It happens to be a very good friend of my wife and I's. And so I would really encourage you to go check V, the variety show, and check out the magic. It's obviously it's illusion. It's not magic, but go check it out. It's a lot of fun. That is great. But I'll tell you something, go to Hoover Dam. That is an incredible experience. 2 hours away, if you have a rental car, most rental cars are no mileage problems. You can go to the rim of the Grand Canyon, which is phenomenal. It's 2 hours from Vegas. And you can take a sidewalk that goes out, a glass sidewalk that goes out over the canyon. I would never do that, but my wife and kids love it. And almost everybody who comes to visit loves it. But there are so many things to do in Vegas. You can go to Circus. You can go to New York. There are a lot of great places. I'll tell you, one of the things, and your son's 11 would absolutely love this, is there's a terrific place to go and watch the Tournament of Champions, which you sit in like a Knights of the Round Table type situation, and there's horses and they joust and do all kinds of fun stuff. That's phenomenal. That's a great place to go. But there's lots of things you can do that cost money and lots of things that are completely free in Vegas. So bring all your kids and come. It's a great city. We'd love to see you there. So there you go. Make sure you send me that email. Next one comes to us from Janet. And Janet B. Janet says, Hondo, I've noticed two very important Raiders stories as of late that you have not touched. I would like you to explain why, because I've tuned in to get your perspective and you have not written about it or talked about in your podcast. And she names the two stories, and I'm not going to. They involve two different stories, two Raiders, but they're not football stories. And this isn't TMZ. I work for Sports Illustrated. I don't work for Political Illustrated. I don't work for the Financial Times. I don't work for TMZ. If something happens that does not impact the Raiders, I don't report on it. I don't report on it. It's of zero value. Period. If you want to talk politics, you can go turn on Fox News. You can go turn on MSNBC. You can go turn on CNN. You can go turn on whomever you like. But that's not what this is about. Period. People don't tune in here to hear Hondo's political opinions. They don't care. I don't tune on sports to hear anybody talk about politics, whether I agree with them or not. And that's not what we do at Sports Illustrated. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of my company for that. And other stories, if they're not Raider stories, we don't report it. I told this story years ago, months ago. I had a player one time call me. I'm not going to say what team or where I was covering, and just said to me, I'm at a particular place. I am very, very intoxicated. Is there any way you'd give me a ride home? Sure. Gave him a ride home. We saw each other regularly. A couple of weeks later, he called me on the phone. He goes, hey, how come you haven't written about that? And I said to him, what was there to write about? Well, I was pretty hammered. And I said, you were? I said, but you didn't get behind a wheel and endanger somebody's life. If you'd have gotten behind the wheel and endangered somebody's life, that instantly became a story, because you could have gotten in massive legal trouble and it would have hurt your athletic career. That would have been a legitimate story. You risked your athletic career. This is not a story. I think sometimes media, and let me tell you, this is what I appreciate about being part of the largest sports media entity in the world, Sports Illustrated. And it is the largest, not even close. I love that we are a sports company. Do we write from time to time on things that are not football related, like if a player gets busted for a DUI? Of course, because that impacts the sport. But if it doesn't impact the sport, we don't touch it. We're not TMZ. And I am proud of that. And so while I respect you asking the question, that's why I didn't. And I think that the world would be a better place if everybody would do their job. When I want to listen to politics, I know where to go to get political opinion and insight. When I want to listen to sports, I want people to be able to say, I can go to Hondo. I can go to Sports Illustrated's Las Vegas Raiders coverage. I can listen to that podcast, and it stays sports. I just think that's important. I think it's totally important. The next one comes from Christian S. Christian says, Hondo, I'm fascinated about a current subject and would love to get your point. Do Max Crosby and Antonio Pierce have the relationship that it appears that they do? Yes, they're close, very close. And I would tell you this, Max Crosby and Antonio Pierce don't like each other. They love each other. And I'm going to say this in defense of both on something. It takes a rare form of integrity and character to be able to be friends with your boss and still see him as a boss. And it takes a rare form of character and integrity to be a boss, be friends with an employee, and still be able to keep the boss role. It's very, 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 very important. Very. And I respect and I admire. I mean that. I respect and I admire AP and Max and how they do it. I think it's pretty phenomenal. Sorry, I just had something pop up on my screen. I have no idea what that is, but okay. But anyways, I think it's admirable and respectful that the way they're able to handle their relationship. And Max, and I consider myself a friend of both men. So when I say this, I don't think either would be offended with me saying it. And if they are, I will hear about it. I think both men are high character guys. And so they're able to understand relationships. I always tell my children, my job is not to be your friend. My job is to be your father. As you grow, the relationship changes. And like, I'll give you an example. I love my children. Okay. My son Shane spent the night here the other night, and we were up laughing and joking, and him and I have a friendship. I'm not saying I don't with my other children. It happens to be he's the last one who was here and spent the night. And it's a very different relationship than I have with Dexter, but Dexter's almost, he's pretty near 2 years old. So it's different. And both men are high motivation guys. Both men are highly driven guys. Both men are on the exact same page. And that allows them to have that close relationship. Thank you, Christian. That was a great one. Great one. Vincent F. writes, Hondo, you have been banging the Janarius Robinson drum since last year. Give it to me straight, big fella. Sorry, I think that's adorable. Give it to me straight, big fella. What you seeing? What you got on J-Rob? So Vincent, great email. By the way, love the name Vincent. Got a nephew named Vincent. Love it. Couple of things, okay? This is a UDFA with a very high motor. And last year, the Raiders get him, and I was kind of tipped off. There may be something with this guy. There just may be a little something. And keep your eye on him. I'm like, okay. So I started writing about Janarius. Then he just really started to show some stuff. There are some things you can't teach. You can't teach size, speed, strength. But and I don't think you can, those are all God-given things. But then there are your heart and your want to. I will never forget years ago listening to a preacher named John Osteen. And I was in this building listening to him, and John began to talk about how strong is your want to. And he talked about a relative of his. I don't remember who the relative was, but a relative that wanted to quit using tobacco. I don't remember if it was chewing or smoking or what it was, but they wanted to quit using tobacco. And they said, well, I just wish God would take away the desire. And he laughed. And finally he said to them, lots of other people have quit tobacco in their life. If you want to quit, it's not up to God taking away desire. It's up to your want to. How bad do you want to? And I never forget the moment he said it, my mind went in a completely different direction. Just about, isn't that true about most things in life? How strong is your want to? You can't teach that. Some people, I'll give you an example. I work really, really hard. I work a ton of hours and I work a long, long time. I'm very limited on the amount of sleep I get. Okay, I'm not complaining, but I was raised by a father with a tremendous work ethic. I will never displace my family from my job. My family is significantly more important than my job, but it doesn't mean my job is not important. So there are a lot of times where I'll set aside my job, have family time, then I find myself back at work at 11, work until 3, maybe 4, jump in bed for a couple hours, get up, take a shower, and go right back to work. Okay. Then I have a friend, a very good friend who I love, who never seems to be able to go do anything. And he will only work 40 hours. He won't take overtime. He won't do anything. It's his desire. And every single time he complains because he can't go do something, I'll say, well, you know what? There's overtime that you're turning down. Oh yeah, but working more than 40 hours a week, I just couldn't do it. I said, well, then don't complain we don't get to go do extra things. I think life comes down to want to. Now, here's where I'm going with this. J-Rob has want to. I watched him, and I want to be very careful on how I word this. I watched Rob Leonard last year, and when I say dressed him down, he wasn't doing anything wrong. But Rob got on him pretty harsh to fix something. And I'll never forget, and I'm paraphrasing here, but when Rob got done, he grabbed him and just said to him, listen, I know you can play at this level. If I didn't, we would just cut you. That's why I want to see it. And I mean that next play, there was no attitude out of J-Rob. It wasn't, look what happened. It was, bam, he did it. And then when he did it, Rob Leonard walks over and hugs him, and the team went over and hugged him. I love teachable people. You've heard me say this a million times. You want to be fat, faithful, available, and teachable. Faithful, available, teachable. And when you're fat in your life, it allows you then, if you have those other skills that God gives, speed, strength, size, to be special. Okay? J-Rob is fat, but J-Rob also has those skills that come from God. And that mixture, now want to can only come from you. Want to. I've taken criticism, some from my competitors, and I find that funny because I do a podcast 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You are Raider Nation. I am your beat writer. If a person doesn't have enough new information to bring to the table, are you covering the team? There is so much. I know topics I want to talk about that I planned on talking about this offseason, and we're 6 days away from training camp. I still haven't gotten to them. There's so much information covering this team. Well, guess what? If you want to be trusted by the fans and you want to be the go-to guy, then you have to show up every day, every single day, every day. I remember when I did my Christmas podcast. Hey, it's Christmas. What are you doing? Got to do my podcast. All right. What I love about my family is they're like, all right, hey, did you do your podcast? My wife will always say to me, hey, I want to do this on this date. What time are you doing your podcast? I know that's priority. You can't teach want to. Some people want to just sit around and complain that things aren't thrown in their lap or things aren't happening. Then some people are like, no, I got want to. I'm going to go make it happen. I heard a story one time that I love telling this story. There's a little boy who gets in trouble by his daddy. And so his daddy says to him, all right, I want you to go and you go in that room and you stay in that room for 6 hours. That's your punishment. So the boy walks in this room, and in the middle of the room is the biggest pile of horse poop you've ever seen in your life. Pretty soon, I don't know if you can hear that. I'm knocking on my desk. He knocks at the door, and Daddy opens the door, and he says, Daddy, can you do me a favor? He goes, I told you you were going to stay in there for 6 hours. He goes, Daddy, I don't want to come out. Okay. What are you knocking on the door for? I need a shovel. Well, why do you need a shovel, son? Because, Daddy, this thing's full of horse poop. That means there's a pony in here somewhere. Want to. How strong is your want to? You can't teach that. I've seen players that have tons of talent, no want to. Remember what I told you Bobby Knight told me? It's not the will to win. Nobody really wants to lose. It's the will to prepare to win. It's that want to. It's those guys showing up in the summer and in the offseason every day with Max Crosby, just pounding it out, working it. It's those guys that when the whistle blows and practice is over, that doesn't mean that if they had a bad rep, they're not going to stay out there. They're going to keep working. They're going to keep working. Just going to work it. These are guys that are watching extra film, want to. Janarius Robinson has want to. Do I think he's as polished as Max? No. Do I think he's as polished as Malcolm Koonce? No. Do I think he could be? Mm-hmm. I think he can be special. I believe in the kid. And what I believe in more is his teammates believe in him. They think he can be really good. And you know what? There's maturity and there's growing up, and then there's learning, okay, I belong here. He made some plays last year, put a little bit of confidence in his belly. His father died when he was young, my grandfather. And my grandfather's name was Ernest. That's where Dexter gets his middle name, Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter. And because my father grew up with his dad having passed away and they didn't have a lot of money, it was very important to my father that his children always have money in their pocket. Didn't have to be a ton of money. And there was a jar next to the door when you'd leave our house. And every Friday or whatever, he'd drop some money in there. Maybe 10 ones and a couple of fives, sometimes a 10. If you were really fortunate, you'd find a 20 in there. But he always would put money in there, and he would always say to his children, I don't ever want you to be in a position with no money in your pocket. I don't want you to have that feeling. And he wanted his children to feel there is something about confidence. This is why I tell dads all the time, man, instill confidence in your children. Instill it in them. Hey, you can do this. You can do this. This is okay. Okay, because once somebody gets confidence, then the whole world changes. The whole world changes. And Janarius Robinson had the size, speed, and the size and the speed and the strength to be good, the things that God gives. He's fat and he has the want to. But last year when he got that sack, he now started to get some confidence. Started to get some confidence. And all of a sudden now he knows, all right, I can do this. I can do this. If you're a parent, think about the times with Dexter when he first started to walk. He didn't want to do it. He wanted to crawl. And I'd keep picking him up. No, come on, we're going to walk. And I don't want to do it. And he'd fall. And he'd fall the first couple times. But the moment he took his first step and didn't fall, I'll never forget this as long as I live. It just makes me want to cry. He turned to me with the biggest smile in the world. Took another step and fell. And never again did he not want to walk. After that, he was bound and determined, I'm going to walk. He had a little confidence. That's Janarius Robinson. This guy has a chance. I'm not willing to say right now he's elite, but he has everything going for him to be elite. So yeah, I'm a J-Rob guy. If there's a J-Rob train, choo-choo, I'm driving it. I believe in the young man. Good kid. And he is a good kid too, by the way. He's a really good kid. All right, next. I say kid, but I'm 53 years old, but you know what I mean. Next, Tommy freaking Eichenberg, Hondo. I'm an Ohio State fan and a Raider fan. I am through the roof excited about this guy. I love your nickname, Tommy freaking Eichenberg. I was stunned when you talked about players you were expecting the most from this year that you did not name him first. When you were talking about rookies. I know you love this kid. I know he plays the way you like. Can you please explain to me, before my mind explodes, why Tommy freaking Eichenberg wasn't the first rookie you said that who you expected something from? This is from Gene M. Gene M in the Natty. Gene M, who lives in the Natty. All right, Gene, easy. Brock Bowers, I expect a lot of. Great player at a position of need. He's going to play a lot. Okay? There are a lot of guys. Trey Taylor, I think, is going to be really good. I'm a Trey Taylor guy. He's another one of those choo-choo guys. I'm driving the choo-choo train of him. I'm the same with Tommy. But he's got so much talent ahead of him, and he's going to have to learn the pro game. I don't think we're going to get to see as much out of him. We might if there's an injury. We might if he just blows the doors off the roof. But if he blows the doors off the roof, there's going to be some people that I believe in, and I know the Raiders believe in, who are going to fail. So I think Tommy's going to play a lot. But I don't have the expectations that maybe I do of a Jackson Powers Johnson, because I don't think Tommy freaking Eichenberg starts as many games as JPJ. Next. Nathan B. Nathan B. emails us from Kansas. Hondo, can you expound on your Thayer Mumford belief? Last year, every time before the draft, when you talked about the Raiders liking Talise Fuaga, you also said, but don't take that as a hit on Thayer Mumford. You have been on the Thayer Mumford bandwagon for a while. I think it's cool. I think it's great to see through the offseason you were proven correct again. But what is it about Thayer? That's from Nathan B. in Kansas. Easy question for me. I like Thayer. Now, I have an advantage. I've known Thayer going back to high school. Remember, I covered the Big Ten before I came in and covered the Raiders in the National Football League. And so I remember interviewing him when he was an elite college recruit. Thayer is a very interesting person. He's very fun to be around. And sometimes people mistake people who are fun as not caring. That's not accurate. I am a big supporter of Thayer. And as a Spartan, I have no issues with a Buckeye because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But, and I'm being funny, but because of Michigan, the Wolverines, go green. But my point to you is with Thayer, I like that he is driven. He has that want to. Him and Janarius Robinson are different a little bit. They're both fat. They both have want to. Both of them, I'll explain to you this way. Janarius Robinson incredibly trusts this staff. If Rob Leonard just said to him, go run through that wall, Janarius Robinson, before he finished, would be halfway to the wall. Thayer may be like, okay, explain to me what technique do you want me to use and how does that make me better? That's just different personalities. Neither is right, neither is wrong. So please don't assume one is right, one is wrong. Just different. But I like Thayer. He's reasonable. He is a very good listener. I love people. My father used to always say, hang around with people who maybe aren't the best talkers, but they're the best listeners. And you want people who can listen. Thayer listens. In fact, I'm going to be very blunt on something. I want to be a little careful of how I word this. I think sometimes his listening ability has hurt him with people. None of them are on the Raiders right now. I think there were some things communicated to him in the past as a Raider where he heard every word that someone said. And then when that person did not follow every word they said to the letter of the law, I think it created a little bit of tension. And I can understand where the person who didn't follow it to the letter of the law, I don't necessarily think they were lying at all. In fact, I know they weren't lying. But I could just see where there would be a little bit of tension. So I think sometimes he listens so good that maybe the people he's communicating don't remember as well as he listens. So I do. I'm a big Thayer guy. I like him personally. He is a very personable man. If you were to ever meet him, you would very much like him. Just to the best of my knowledge, I've never met his family. And I say that all the time because I've met so many of the guys' family and know them. And some I do, some I don't, but some I've met. I will tell you this. I don't believe I've met his family, but if I have, I'm not lying to you. I apologize. But you can tell he was raised by really good people. And I just like Thayer. And here's the cool part. Some guys you like, and I like them. But then there are guys you respect. And I respect them. I think a lot of people threw a lot of disrespect at him last year. And the Raiders would have taken Thayer Mumford if Brock Bowers had not been there. And if, Joe Alt had not been there, I think they would have taken, I want to reword. Let's just say I strongly believe, and not guessing, they would have taken Thayer ahead of Joe Alt. And that would not have been a slam on Thayer Mumford. Not in the least, it would have been a theory of taking the best player available. Then I think you probably would have saw Thayer maybe go to a guard because he was good enough to play. But the Thayer Mumford discussion, for those in the know, was not a disrespect of Thayer. And a lot of people, man, trashed him. And but I respect him. So that's why. Next, I think this was a great question from Melissa B. Hondo, what do you like most about Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and Anthony Brown? I know that you've been very complimentary of all three. What is it you like, the number one attribute of all of them? Number one, Gardner Minshew. Very short memory. A lot of quarterbacks live in fear of making mistakes. And he is not reckless with the football at all. I'm not implying that. But I really like he's got a short memory. All right, that pass missed. Hey, want to run it again? I love that about Gardner. I like that. Aiden O'Connell, there's several things I like, but since you asked me for one, I would tell you I like his will to prepare to win. Could have talked about his accuracy. I could have talked about the way he is, the way his teammates feel about him. But I'm going to talk about this. Remember what I said about Bobby Knight? It's not the will to win, it's the will to prepare. Aiden O'Connell will outwork anyone. Anyone. He is a Max Crosby work ethic. Different positions, they work out differently. But Max Crosby, to me, is the gold standard of football players. He's the gold standard. Just is want to, he's fat, all of it. He's elite, he's everything. I think Aiden has that will to prepare to win like Max. And I like that about him. Anthony Brown, I'll tell you exactly what I love about Anthony Brown. That kid is a worker. There's a lot of people on this team because AP has built a team of people who are hard workers. There are a lot of people that work as hard as Anthony Brown. I don't think anyone works harder than him. I've heard some interesting stuff I'm not going to talk about right now. I'm going to wait till we get to Costa Mesa, but that I'm going to be reporting on him. But y'all know I've been talking about him, and I've heard a couple of things from some people that I want to talk to Anthony, and I want to talk to a couple other people before I report it. But he is a diligent worker, and a lot of people respect him. Very good question. Thank you, Melissa. The next one comes from there's two more. The next one comes from Brad T. Brad T lives in Marietta, Georgia. Hondo, I may be the biggest Georgia Bulldog fan and the biggest Las Vegas Raider fan in the world. Please see attached picture. And by the way, Brad, that is a really cool picture. Very cool. I love Zamir, but I want to talk about something else with you. You seem to be a person who's optimistic all the time. Where does that come from? Well, okay, first of all, there's a lot of people that don't think I was optimistic after 20 games with Josh McDaniels. I had some people say that I was the hardest on Josh McDaniels. I'm in the press conferences. I think I asked the most difficult questions after 20 games. Doesn't matter. I think some others asked some really difficult and good ones too. But I generally approach life half full. Half full. My glass is half full. I look at life from a different perspective. I think a lot of that has to do with my faith. If I didn't have my faith, I would not be as optimistic because I know every one of my failures. I know every one of them. I'm not preaching in the least bit, but since you asked me, I can tell you when I sing the song Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, that was totally written about me. Totally written about me. I'm no value without Christ. So I think it comes there. But I'm optimistic because every day that I get up is a gift. And I have a very, very good friend named Jeff. And Jeff is my wife and I's accountant, but he's a very good friend. We were out to dinner with him and his wife the other night. And years ago, their son was a very, very well-respected baseball player. And he got brain cancer. And he ended up dying at 19 years old. Bright future as a baseball player, bright future as a kid. Great kid. And he died. And my friend Jeff and his wife, who happens to be my friend also, Carol, would give anything. If you said to them today, we'll let Jeff come back to life, but you got to die, give me the gun. And I love their optimism about life. They're sad that they lost their son, but they also know where he was in his life personally, his faith. And when I look at that, it reminds me, my children are all healthy. My bills are paid. I have a wife who loves me, loves our kids, loves the Lord. I work for a wonderful company. I have great bosses in Raider Nation. You guys care. It's so nice to cover. I was talking to one of my colleagues in the media who covers another NFL team, and he literally said to me, how cool is it that your fans care? I've got a lot of reasons to. It certainly doesn't mean that I don't have difficulties. I was dealing with one just before I started the podcast today. Doesn't mean I don't have problems. It just means that when I get up, it's a gift. And I get the privilege of taking on. I was talking to someone recently who was complaining about being away from home and being in Costa Mesa for training camp. And I love this person, but I said, hey, do you not understand? You don't have to. You can quit. You get to. I don't have to go to Costa Mesa. I get to. Am I going to be away from my family? Yes. Is that difficult? You know it. But I work for a great company, and I've got a super supportive family, and I get to go to Costa Mesa. Okay, do I want to be with my family every day? Sure. But if I don't get to, I'm watching football every day. I mean, come on now. If you can't be excited about that, if you can't see the silver lining in that dark cloud, I always talk about, there are people who, if they won the lottery, would moan, groan, and complain because they had to pay the taxes. I don't want to be that guy. It's not me. It's not the way I live my life. And I don't think it's the way that you want a beat writer to be. Hey, not every bit of news on the Raiders is going to be good. And if you're a beat writer and all you do is talk about the positive on everything, you're not a good beat writer. But if you're a beat writer who approaches the beat from a negative set of glasses, you're not a good beat writer either. I'm going to look for the positive, but report all. That's how I get my optimistic approach to life. I hope that answers your question. And that's how I want to cover your Raiders. That's the guy I want to be covering your Raiders. I want you guys to be able to know Hondo's going to give me the truth. And if he says the sky's falling, you better go inside. But there's a lot of people who cry wolf. It's not reality. Look at all the people who got worked up about Devonte Adams. I mean, all right, I'm going to go here. I have been telling you all along, including as early as Monday. If you didn't watch Monday's podcast, go watch it. Where everything stands with Devonte. But oh God, rumors get going. Hondo. Stop. I just delete those. Why would you delete them? It's not disrespectful. When I've been telling you all along, there's nothing there. It's a big nothing burger. The emperor has no clothes. Do I think that's why I did a whole podcast on Monday on the future of Devonte Adams? Is there a chance he won't finish his career in Las Vegas? Yes. Do I think it's imminent? No. Do I think it's what he wants? No. If I had to guess right now, will he finish his career Raider? Yeah. But I laid out the circumstances in which he wouldn't. And so you can say it, but Raider Nation is big. And how long have I talked to you guys about clickbait? You can write anything you want about hearing the Raiders. Okay, do you remember the entire offseason? If you did not watch my podcast on the autopsy of the draft, you've got to go back and watch it. I beg you to, please. The autopsy of the draft. It was about, I think it was the Monday after the draft. Please go watch that podcast. Please, I beg you. But I talked about everyone. Oh, Raiders going after a quarter. No, they weren't. They weren't. And you know what? I lost followers because I reported truth. I had people ask me on the inside, oh, man, I see the beating you're taking. I don't care. I don't care. I literally don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I saw some people saying they're not following anymore. I don't care. You may say, what kind of a guy are you? You don't care. Because I got to live with me. And I work for an audience of one. And as long as I know that I did my best and I reported as accurately as I could, I'm okay with that. I'm a big boy. And so people get all worked up. Oh, another person said it. Stop. I literally emailed. I stopped because I just cut and pasted the same thing. I've reported many times the reality of the situation. My reporting has not changed. If you want to listen to people who continually provide you clickbait and get you worked up, that's great. Please don't email me about it. Don't want to hear it. I'll give you a really good one. My sister was dating a guy that kept breaking her heart. And about the second or third time, my dad looked at her and goes, don't come home crying anymore about a broken heart. He's already proven to you to be a heartbreaker. Now you just must like it. So some people just enjoy being whipped into a frenzy. Some people just like, woo! Ah! I mean, I remember people saying, the Raiders are moving up. They're getting Jaden Daniels. You don't know what you're talking about. They're making calls right now. Okay. And then after the draft, when they say, no, we weren't, and they confirm all of my reporting, you were just guessing. Okay. That's just not how I approach it. So how do I maintain an optimistic attitude? I think I understand I have an audience of one, and I know exactly what my requirements are, and I stick to those. You cannot find your comfort from those to whom you're sent, only from the one who sends you. And so when you understand that, quick one. I love to eat fresh duck. There's nothing better than going duck hunting in the morning and coming home and having fresh duck for lunch. Okay. And a lot of people who eat my fresh duck have commented that may be the best meat or duck I've ever had in my life. Okay. From time to time, someone will say, oh, that's gross. Okay. They just don't like duck. But all I can do is prepare it to the best of my ability. And if somebody doesn't like it, I'm not mad about that. That doesn't bother me because I did my best. Whatever you do it wholeheartedly. And so when you approach with that attitude, and you work towards that attitude, Max Crosby says it 10 times better than me. He goes, I know the standard and I hold myself to the standard. When you know your standard and you hold yourself to it, you can live life optimistically. Why am I optimistic about the Raiders? Because for the first time in my 5 years of covering this team, everybody's on board with the standard. I don't know that everyone's going to be able to live up to it, but I know everyone knows it and is committed to doing their best to get to the standard. I also know that if guys are not able to get to the standard, they will be removed and replaced so they find somebody who will. You're darn right. I am optimistic on the Raiders. And not because I am an apologist or a Kool-Aid salesman. It's because I live in Realville. I'm a realist, and I know what my eyes tell me. And my eyes tell me there is a standard in this franchise now, that everyone is on the same page with. And if somebody gets removed, it's not because they didn't know the standard. It's simply because they didn't have an ability to perform at the standard. I hope you understand the difference there. And so am I optimistic? You bet I am. But I also think it's warranted. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. God bless you.